Today we are going to have a look at the virtual pin that I've got here, how it works and how you can use some of the things that I've done in your own build. And that's really what this video is all about. You're here maybe because you're interested in building your own pin. Well, let's take a look at all the aspects of it, because there is quite a lot to consider when you're building a virtual pin. Now the first thing is, guys, you've probably seen, if you go and look for one that's already pre-built, a virtual pinball machine, you're looking at a lot of money, right? In Australia here, well over $5,000 to $6,000-7,000. It's like the price of a brand new, like, real pinball machine. Of course, you're getting all the other pinball machines in there in terms of virtual machines. Mind you, they shouldn't really be including them in those machines, because they are free tables available on the net, other than things like the Pinball Arcade and Pinball FX 2 and so forth, which you can also play on here. But yeah, that's expensive when you look at it firsthand. But the thing is, guys, that there is actually quite a lot of hardware that goes into these machines. Even if you make your own machine like I have done here, you'll find that it soon adds up. Especially if you're going to like build your own cabinet as well. I don't think that's necessarily a great idea. There's a lot of wooden hardware in these machines. Having said that, if you find yourself a donor pinball machine, of course, make sure it's one that can't be recovered or repaired and it's been stripped already. Don't want to send too many pinball machines off to the graveyard in terms of swapping out all their good parts for a virtual pinball. But anyway, enough of that. So yeah, just be wary that if you take on this project, it is a big project. It's not like a main box. Main was a little bit easier to sort of set up and whatnot, but there's a lot of similarities with that, so don't let that put you off. It's just a matter of going through it methodically and picking up the pieces you need. So first of all, guys, what do you have to do? You have to get yourself a machine. Two types of machines. You've got the normal size pinball machines, and you've got the wide bodies. And have a think carefully about that. I think it's a personal preference thing, mind you. I chose a normal width pinball machine. I just like that sort of size when I'm standing up on it to play the games. Most of the games that are emulated are, of course, the normal size anyway. You will play some widescreen pinball games that are virtualized, and of course on a narrower screen it doesn't look quite as good, but vice versa, you don't really want to play the normal ones on a widescreen. So I think it's really a personal preference thing, guys. So just choose your cab first, but you can do either. A lot of people do choose the widescreen one for their own personal preference. Other than that, really, it's all about just getting an empty cab to start with, and then really planning out how you're going to fit it out in terms of screens. So you'll see behind me that I've got two PC screens here, and I've actually got a real DMD. So yeah, you can choose to have the two screens and a real DMD, or you can choose to have three screens, so that you can have the DMD display on a third monitor. Now, a lot of the cards these days, a lot of the video cards support having three outputs off the one card, so you can certainly do that. When I first built this, a lot of the cards I had only had two outputs, so I had to put two video cards in to support three screens and have the DMD on the third screen. So up to you how you want to configure that. I highly recommend getting a real DMD. There's nothing like it. You won't see it on the video camera, but the brightness of that thing is super bright. It's a little bit like trying to capture a vector monitor. You just can't get the brightness on a video screen until you see it in real life. It's the same thing with these. It really does provide an added experience. This one's an orange one, and it's running some hardware called Pin DMD 2. There is a Pin DMD 3 that's now out, and that actually has a full RGB color DMD display. And certainly if I hadn't have got this one, I would have gone for the later one, even though a lot of the pinball machines actually didn't have color displays. I've seen a few out in the wild that have had the color mods done, which is an official mod. That's on real machines, but yeah, most of them were if they had DMDs, they were in orange anyway. This particular DMD it's called a Vichy, I think it was called a Vichy. I can't remember if it was a 1000 or Vichy 2000 or 3000. I can't remember now. But that was a separate part that I bought, as well as the Pin DMD2 controller to drive it, which then just runs through to the PC via USB. So we'll look at that a little bit more when we actually get under the covers of the machine. But if you don't choose that, yeah, just you can use 3 displays. So what else we got in terms of hardware? Well, the other things we have here is a few things in terms of cabinet considerations and screen sizes to just be aware of, guys. So in here currently I have actually a 30, I think it's actually a 30, was it a 39 inch at the time? I think, or maybe it was a 37 point, oh no, 38.5, somewhere around there anyway. A long time ago since I got this particular screen. It's got quite thick bezels on the side. These bezels today would be really the bezels you would see if you picked up the machine, or the screen. In terms of that would be the outside bezel. That is not the outside bezel of this particular TV when I got it. This was a TV which I've decased, and this is the raw panel just sitting in there, and you'll see that it actually fits in here just perfectly. And that was a harrowing experience, buying a brand new TV and ripping off the case to see if it would fit. So I had an inkling that it would, and by golly, it's a millimetre or so off either side. So I believe you can get like a 40 inch which will fit in there perfectly these days with a very, very thin edge. And of course you can get much better quality displays than the one that I have in here, although this one's perfectly fine, to be honest. It's currently running 1080p. It's going to be, you can run 4K, and there are some tables that have been specifically worked on to be 4K in terms of quality, so that's pretty awesome. So I'm looking at doing that down the track, but for now, especially if you're running it with a PC with you know, reasonable hardware, not top end stuff, then you probably won't be wanting to run at 1080p anyway. And you also see the way that I've got this hooked in here. Again, a lot of people do this in different ways. Some people like to have it like flat right from the top. I don't particularly like that. I mean, it's, you know, it's 2D, it's not 3D, as we know. It's a emulated 3D. So what I've done is I've just dropped it into the cabinet down. It sort of just helps it, I think, in terms of giving it a 3D look. And the side panels here of the machine sort of drop away like a real machine would. So I quite like that, but you might want to do it differently. One of the things in relation to that is around the front, you've got your main launch ball controller and your plunger. And the way that I've got it situated here is I've got the plunger set down lower, so that the actual plunger mechanism goes underneath the display, even though the display comes down on an angle. Otherwise, if the display was on an angle and the plunger was up the top, you would see the plunger over the top of the screen up here, the back of it. So that would be no good. So that's why it works on my particular configuration. But if you're building your own, you need to think about those things well in advance. Otherwise, you might end up putting your screen in the wrong place and your plunger not being in the right place for the screen. Now, of course, in a widescreen cabinet, you would be able to get a much bigger TV in there for your playfield. So that's another thing to consider. But again, I don't know if, you know, going too big, it starts looking a bit strange again for those normal tables, but it's up to you. In terms of the aspect ratio, it's not exactly the length of a normal pinball table, which really an ultra wide screen would be absolutely perfect for this. And in fact, if you made a mini sort of pinball machine, because you can't really get the ultra wides in this exact size, I've been looking. But if you made a smaller one, you can make a miniature pinball machine with an ultra wide, which would have really the right aspect ratio. The only problem with that is that the software currently doesn't support, the tables haven't been designed with ultra wide in mind, which is a real shame. That would have been awesome, but at the moment it says 16 by 9, so you'll see at the back here, it doesn't look like it from here because we're front on to the machine, but the head unit I've actually moved forward so that it comes, you know, close to the back of the screen. So it's a bit of an optical illusion. It sort of looks like a normal size machine, but in fact it is actually smaller. And all I did there is on this particular pinball machine, it had 4 bolts in the back for the head, and I just moved it forward and just stuck it on the 2 front bolts. and that brings it forward. Now I have seen other people do it in a different way, where they'll keep the physical apron of the original pinball machine at the front, and then they'll move the screen in front of it, and then the screen, and then the back box is in its normal place. And to me, it just looks a bit odd, because you've sort of got like a physical apron, and then when you see your virtual machine, you've also got a virtual apron, so you've got double aprons, and your flippers are way up, further up the play field here. I like to see them where they should be, which is right down here and nice and close. So it's another thing that you need to just consider, if where you position your screen, and if you want it back or forward. I personally like it closer to me. So that's all the main things about the main display. If we look at the back box, the display in the back has a couple of things there. First of all, you'll see that this graphics isn't all the way down to the bar, and that's because it was previously, but when I had to fix up the PC, I did have to change out the graphics card, so I need to fix that up. But anyway, you can see, like, normally that whole back glass there would be all the way down to the bottom, and it looks pretty cool. I mean, it's still not properly square like a lot of the pinball back glasses are, but it's a nice effect. The other thing is, you'll see that it's exactly like the fitting of the back box itself, edge to edge. And to do that, I actually had to cut a hole on the side of the back box all the way through, and slid the TV through, so that the actual edges of the TV are actually within the wood, and then actually filled the outside in, sanded it off, and then I've re-decaled the whole cabinet with a Theatre of Magic theme anyway, so that covers it up completely. But it does mean that TV's not coming out of there. But the other nice thing is that, yeah, it's edge-to-edge display from a back box perspective. And it's just something to think about, guys, because I think if you've got big bezels around the back box, it just again loses some of its feel. I mean, I know it's a virtual box, everyone knows it's a virtual machine, but I think it's just nice if you just pay attention to some of those details and maximize the screen area if you can. In terms of the screens themselves, like that back one was that was an old, like, Sony sort of TV. This one here is a TV again, so we're not talking about computer monitors here, guys. And in terms of, there may be people that will detect, a bit of input lag and differences in terms of the colours and refresh rates and so forth from a computer monitor, but for me, it's fine. I mean, yeah, the refresh rate probably could be higher, which would be a nice thing when you've got a really fast moving ball, but other than that, it doesn't really bother me. Some other nice things about a real pinball machine, like if you consider building it yourself, again with all the hardware, one of the key things is the lockdown bar. Now, you could buy a lockdown bar and add it to your own home-built cabinet, but the lockdown bar is just gives it a really, really nice feel when you got your hands on the side pressing the buttons. It's just, it just feels right. Now at the moment, you'll also notice I've actually got the glass off it because I was fixing it all up and getting it all working, so the glass is in here, but normally there'll be the pinball glass here. We'll get it all dialed in later when we fix it all back up. And you'll also see that there's some lighting around the side, so there's a number of sort of force feedback and feedback type of things added to this cabinet to give it a little bit more zing, rather than just running the emulation software itself. There's some hardware in here as well that just adds to the experience, so we'll be looking at that stuff as well. This here is some RGB Cree lighting, and I have 3 of those down the left hand side and 2 on the right hand side, and they will flash in place of the actual real flashes of the pinball machines driven by the ROMs themselves. So it provides a pretty authentic experience. Obviously it's not going to be in exactly the same position as the flashes would be on the table that you play, because the tables move, and this is hardware, so that's not. Clearly they don't sit around on the outside like this. Normally I have them screwed into the side here with little covers on top of them, so that it just disperses the light, because they are really, really bright. But they are absolutely awesome, and they provide an added experience to the whole game play as well. So we'll look at that when we get underneath the covers. Elsewhere on this cabinet, I've got a topper up the top there. I think that can't remember where that came from. It's a topper of one pinball, I'm not sure which. I've got some other bits and pieces in there, but there's some more Cree lighting up the top there, which actually hooks through to the Cree lighting that's here. So they're linked through to the same driver board, and it mirrors the lights just to give it a nice effect. So there's lighting happening off the top of the back box, and there's lighting happening around the sides to mimic the real lighting. And I'll tell you what, guys, that really does provide a big difference to the gameplay, because the normal lighting off an LCD monitor is, it's just the same brightness as the monitor. But when these things kick in, they are really, really bright. And all the flashing and stuff, you just really sort of get absorbed into it and think you get a little bit closer to playing a real pinball. Never going to be the same, guys, but it gets pretty close. Okay, well, the other thing I need to talk about here is in terms of buttons. And I've seen a lot of people on their pinball machines, their virtual ones, they create just huge amounts of buttons. I wanted to keep it really simple, keeping in theme with the original pinball machine. So I went just for the original start button, the extra ball, but I did actually add another ball for a exit button. And in hindsight, I probably could have got away with doing a combination of the start and extra to exit out. So you might want to think about that. A launch ball on the right hand side, because some of those tables that don't have a plunger require you just to press the launch, so you do need both of those. I mean, you could have just the plunger, I guess, and have the launch underneath, or a separate smaller button on the left for those games with launch. Again, it's up to you really how you want to lay that out. But for me, this works really well. One of the things about the launch button like that, I find that if I've got my hands on the side of the machine, I can actually I'll be playing. If I lose the ball, I can just reach around with my pinky finger and just hold the button down and push it, and that'll release the plunger, which is pretty cool. So yeah, you need to just decide how you do that, but do have a think about that, guys. It's one of those sort of little gotchas about building one of these tables, is where do these buttons go. I had to sort of re-drill where some of my buttons went and fill them in. On the side, I've got the normal flipper button, and then I've also got a MagnaSave. Now MagnaSave, some tables some virtual tables do support it, and normally I think on most pinball machines that have MagnaSaves, they're normally sort of forward to the flipper button. They're in front. Now I didn't want to do that because, again, where my screen is slightly lower, so if I put another button through there, you'd be able to see the mechanism for the button poking through. It wouldn't look good aesthetically, so I decided to put it down further, and all I did is I actually stuck my hand on the side of the cabinet, put my hand comfortably where the flipper button is, and then just dropped my hand down, and then basically wherever my finger landed was where I put the MagnaSave button. So have a think about that, because again, it needs to be easy for people to access, and for yourself to access when you're playing games with MagnaSave. Okay guys, and poking down out the back there is two flashing units too, so they give a bit of a strobe flashing effect. Another nice effect to go along with the Cree lighting. Other than that, in terms of the outside aesthetics, obviously I've done it up with some Theatre of Magic artwork. That artwork doesn't fit the style of machine. It should really be in a 90s style box, which is different in size, so the artwork is cut off slightly. And these older machines used to have a much bigger side rail, so I actually replaced those side rails with the 90s style side rails, so you get more visibility of the art. So this is a little bit of a custom version of a real pinball machine, that's for sure, but I like it. So guys, what I'll do is I'll just have a quick game right now so you can see it running as it is. Obviously, again, these Cree lightings are just hanging out the side here, so we'll put these back in properly once we take it apart. But let me just give you a bit of a look of how it plays, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the screen out, and then we'll get in behind there and I'll show you all the parts underneath there and how it all hangs together. So the other thing, guys, I did just in terms of ease of playing is that in terms of the credit button, I just rigged that up to the coin rejection button. So you press that, get more coins in, and you can see the way that the software is rigged up. It goes through a LED whiz, which I'll show you later, and you can see that the start button is flashing, ready to go.
In ancient Baghdad, a most beautiful princess.
Now, I've been having some problems with this plunger. which I need to get sorted out. That actually requires a whole new plunger. You can see now though that this table is nice and smooth. I'll just turn it down a little bit. That's the other nice thing with a virtual table. Of course, you can turn it up and down how you like it. Won't be able to get the skill shot without getting that plunger sorted. Okay, you'll hear the rumble pack there. So it's got a rumble pack and a gear motor as well as a knocker. And we'll look at those later when we get into the machine. And also you can see that I can wobble the ball here. So it's got full nudging. And guys, you really do have to have nudging working, because that's what pinball's all about. So it's a big step from just being emulated and virtual to the real life feel when you've got some nudge happening. And not so much with these 90s games. I mean, you still need nudge every so often, but certainly for older style games, nudging is essential. Ball was nice and smooth. I've got a new graphics card in here, guys, and it's an overkill because it's actually my 1080 from my main gaming rig, which I've replaced with a 1080 Ti. So this is well and truly more than what's required for this machine, but makes everything silky smooth. And I guess with pinball, that's one of the things you really need to have a smooth experience, because if it's jerky, you'll just it takes you out of the feeling that it's real. But you can, once you get into this with the really good sound and with the rumbling and the gear motors and the Cree lighting, all of that, just feeling the table, feels like a real pinball table. You really do sort of just forget. You just forget you're in a virtual table. You're just right into playing pinball, which is just so awesome, considering you can swap tables and play tons of others as well. So yeah, that was a rather average game, but that was just to sort of show you what it looks like. And what we'll do now is we shall open up the hood. And of course I don't have the glass on here. I mean, normally I would take off the lockdown bar and take the glass out, but we can just go straight in and pull the screen out. So what I'll do is I'll power it down first, of course, and then let's get the screen out and let's look inside. Okay guys, so normally to get this off I would be coming in here and taking off the lockdown bar. And I think just tighten it up, there we go. And that'll be sliding out the glass when you normally have it all set up. Okay, now at the moment you'll see that these Cree lighting is actually sort of stuck around the side, just in that gap. It does sort of pin itself underneath the screen, and what I want to do eventually is actually cut some channels for this wiring, so that it doesn't keep getting caught underneath the screen. The screen doesn't move out a lot, but obviously every time I take it in and out, it's a risk of fraying the wires. They're pretty sturdy though. So anyway, we'll get the screen out of here. I'll just lift it up and round. And around the back here, I'll just take off the power, and on this side take out the HDMI. So you can see around the back here is basically a raw panel from a TV, and you'll notice that this front side over here, I actually got the original remote control panel, which this part of the front plastic here was like a strip across the whole bottom of the original TV, and so I cut that off and then sort of attached it to the front just so that I can still actually operate it through the door if I want to access the settings. Now, one other important thing, guys, to note about these TVs is that often they won't actually turn on automatically when they're first powered up. So I just struck lucky that as soon as this one gets power, it comes on, and as soon as it recognises the source, it's happening. Other ones you have to actually power them on manually, which could be a bit of a pain in a cabinet, obviously, especially if you have to do it through infrared using a remote. So maybe that's another thing you need to check before you buy a particular TV. See if it automatically turns on. Right guys, so let's take a peek inside. Now, this definitely isn't a professional job, is it? Wires absolutely everywhere. Obviously when cables are nicely tidied up, everything looks a lot better. So this is pretty much a quick and dirty job of getting all this in here originally. I have intended to come back and clean it up at some stage, but look, that doesn't stop us going through today and looking what's in here. Just getting a bit of a feel and understanding for what you need to be connected up. It might look a little bit daunting initially for some of you, but really it's not. We look through the basic things first. We have a PC, so pretty standard. As I said, I'm running a 1080 GTX card in there, but that's really, or GeForce, that's really overkill. I had a 780 in here before, and that was the one that died. That was working pretty well, so that's an older style card. I tried a 950 from my main box when I was doing some testing. That did half the tables okay, some stuttered. So I think probably a 960 might be, or sort of a 10 if in the current generation, 1060 might be sort of a good minimum. 1070 would eat up a lot of stuff, and then 1080 of course if you wanted to get up to sort of 4K type of stuff. So yeah, other than that, the other thing I put in here was an SSD drive. This is poking in and down under here, and geez, what a massive difference that has made. Now this thing fires up in no time short, so definitely recommend an SSD. And of course the other thing in terms of a hard disk drive, an SSD is the right way to go, was because you don't want mechanical drives in here. You're nudging the thing, right? You don't want to be nudging the PC with hard drives in here. I mean, the alternative thing, and I think I had this at one stage set up like this. I actually had this PC outside of the box, of the pinball machine, and then just, you know, bringing the wires up inside. But I think once I started getting all the other force feedback and lots of different USB connections, I decided to bring it all back into the case itself. I've got a little unit on here that just gives me the temperature, so when I open up the front door I can see the temperature of the cab. It stays really pretty cool in here. One thing I added underneath this PC, on the bottom part of the cabinet, I've actually got two massive I think 120 centimeter fans drawing air up into the cab, and effectively the airflow goes underneath the cab here up through the back box, and then around the back of the back box there's holes around the top, and the air goes out the back there as the heat rises. So yeah, so that's the standard PC setup. Now you will notice that up the top here I've got an additional power supply. That is a normal ATX power supply as well, but that's the one that's actually driving the PC. So what's this one doing? Well, this one is driving a extra booster board here. So this particular board, and again it looks sort of relatively complicated, but it's not really. This is from Zeb's boards. Now I highly recommend Zeb's boards. This worked flawlessly, as well as the shaker motor and the gear motor. Both of those worked absolutely 100%. He's an extremely knowledgeable guy, and he's got a whole lot of other new stuff now. So this was sort of I think the older equipment. But what's going on here? Well, basically a couple of things. A little bit hard to show just because the amount of wires that are going in here, and also I'm trying to remember myself in relation to how this is all set up. But you can see through the back here, just around the back here, this is where all the RGB is. Really hard to see there, guys, sorry. But this is where all the RGB connections for the Cree lighting goes into that. And this just provides the necessary boosted power to drive those things, because those lights are so bright. Now normally what you could do is you could drive those lights off your typical LED whiz board, which is what I've got here. So you'd have those connected off the side here, and That's okay when you're sort of driving little small LEDs, but when you're driving those really high-powered Cree lighting flashing effects, this board, it doesn't really cope that well. So again, Zeb's boards had a way of interfacing from his booster board to the LED whiz. So the way that this is hooked up is the LED whiz goes to the PC. So in the software, I've got it set up so that it's connecting through to a LED whiz to drive the lighting. So it comes through in here, and as I said, you could have LEDs driving off the back of that if you just wanted to have that by itself, or you hook it up to here and then have all your RGB lighting being driven off here instead. And as far as the software is concerned, it's just talking to the LED whiz, and that's driving this board. And the other thing that it's driving on here is, well, it can do a number of things. First thing is it drives a knocker. So main knocker, if you win a game, you can see it just at the back there. So I've just screwed it to the side. So that gives that big thump knock when you get a extra ball for some games. And also replays and that sort of thing. So that's driven off there as a piece of additional hardware. And then down the side here we have the gear motor, which is this guy here, and then we've got a rumble pack there. So the gear motor sort of makes that sort of whiny noise that a lot of games have when they're sort of moving something metal across the playfield. It sort of gives that whirring noise, sort of like I always think of it like a window wiper, but it's more of a gear noise, which is why it's called a gear motor. And the other one's the rumble, which gives you the shake, and so that shakes the cabinet. So really cool, and Jurassic Park and plenty of other games that Circus Voltaire, a lot of those use the rumble pack, and so that will just shake the whole machine and you feel it as you're playing it. So those two units there are effectively hooked back up to the booster board. And if I look closely here, and again guys, I'm re-looking at this for the first time after a long time. Yeah, we've got that on there. I can't read it, probably read it better on the camera actually, but I can see one of them says strobe there, so that's for the strobe lights. The other's got to be for the gear motor and the shaker motor as well. And we also have in the middle here a row of contactors. So what you can do is you can hook up contactors here or solenoids to here, and they will fire off when the bumpers fire off on the virtual pinball machines. And so again, that would give it another nice effect. You feel sort of hear the real solenoids hitting the side of the cabinets. You literally would just set them up along, around the back here. And so they'd fire off and hit the side of the cabinet every time a bumper is hit on the virtual machine. So I might do that at one stage. I haven't got that rigged up as yet. But again, these boards have changed, guys. But the main thing is that if you go to Zeb's boards and just go through and look through his stuff, and he's, again, extremely knowledgeable, and he's on some of the forums there, he'll certainly provide assistance where you need it. But in terms of hardware in here, it's really as complex as it gets. The main booster board driving all the Cree lighting, and the two pieces of hardware being the shaker motor and the gear motor, as well as the knocker, and it could drive some contactors as well. And we've got the LED whiz, which is the main one connecting through to it, which is driving all the lighting. And then outside of that, we have a plunger over here, and you can see, because the plunger bar comes all the way in here. And that's why, remember I was saying about the screen sits on the top here, and you see it only just clears that as it sits there. And then the screen also rests close to the flipper button where the sleeve switch is. The screen stops here and comes up to the sort of the front of the lockdown bar. So other than that, in terms of all the standard buttons, oh, by the way, sorry, this plunger unit comes through to, there's one more board down here underneath the wiring, a little board here. So that board, hard to see, but it's just a little PCB anyway. That's another USB board that's connected up, which drives the plunger. And I can't remember if that one is actually driving also the switches. I know a number of the plunger boards allow you to plug the plunger in, and also they support a standard lot of push buttons as well. But you can use any sort of push button thing. And again, if you've set up a main machine, you'll be familiar with things like iPacks and so forth, and any of those sorts of types of devices you can use to hook up your buttons. So you can see, again, coming back to that power supply, that whole power supply is feeding that booster board here, as well as the top board here, and it just provides an additional supply. I didn't want to load that off the back of the PC one. It's better to have a dedicated one, and the connector there anyway is the same as one going straight to a motherboard, so having a separate power supply is a good idea. Okay, the only other thing here, there's some original pinball wiring from what was here previously, but as I said, I've got one of these hooked up to the front reject button, so that's that one, and it goes back off and connects up to register a credit button. And other than that, guys, there really isn't much more in here. We've got a subwoofer at the back, and coming up into the Vishay real DMD. There's a little control board which is the pin DMD. We're not going to be able to see that in there, I don't think, but that is in there behind there, and that runs off 5 volts, I think. So I've got a 5 volt adapter driving that display. The other thing you'll notice, I haven't really finished these speakers. I want to get some proper speakers in here that fit this. Just got some tucked in behind there that are linked through to the sub, and definitely recommend having a sub for these games for sure. And then this little guy here, didn't really talk about that before, but that's to stop the reflection of the DMD onto the glass. So normally when you have a glass here, you can get a real harsh reflection from the DMD onto the playfield. So that just stops it, and when you're sort of at a playing distance, at a playing height, it sort of disappears because you're sort of looking down at the table like that, so you really don't see it. There are other ways of doing that. Some people put this like privacy, like glass or mesh that you can put on there. Not really a mesh, it's like a film, and that just allows light to come out a certain way, like straight out and up and not down. And I've seen people use that as well, which is pretty effective. At the back here you can see those flashing units too, actually bent back a little bit. I can bring them forward and they'll provide a little bit more output in terms of being able to visually see them. And guys, that's really it. So as I said, it's not particularly hard in terms of hardware. It really is just a PC. Got extra power supplies, the boosted boards from Zeb's, you know, the LED whiz, which you would use in a main box anyway. Typical buttons that you just wire up as you would if you're doing a main box, and then you've really just got a couple of extra devices, like the gear motor, the rumble pack, and the knocker at the back. And then if you choose to put more solenoids or contactors in, install those up there as well, and really off you go. So let's get this all buttoned back up, and with the glass on and all, and the lighting back where it should be. Needs to be screwed back up on here, and then we'll fire up the machine and we'll have a look at the software side of things. Right, so you can see that I've got the Cree lights back in here, and these were just little pinball light covers that I got from, I think, Marco a long time ago. What I will do though is that they are still really bright. There's 3 there, and you can see there's 2 there, and they are still really bright. So what I normally do is I just stick a little bit of black tape. It's classy, I know, but I put a bit of black tape just over the side here, and then it just ensures the light flicks out that way and not really straight back into your eye, because they are really super bright. They're so effective. And just in terms of the layout, it just so happens, I mean, a lot of games tend to have like flashy units about here, like 3 of them, or if there is a, you know, if they've only got 1, then it's normally here or up the back there, or 1 up down the bottom. And because this side's the plunger lane, normally there might be 1 on the inside here and 1 up the top. And I found that it's generally pretty close in that sort of layout. So if you want to do something similar, I highly recommend that. And you'll find that with the software will light up generally in the same color as whatever the one is on the table, and it just spills out extra light over the top of it, and again just provides a really nice effect. Now there's some other ways of doing this. I know some people actually just have a bar at the back sort of covering that whole area, and they have their 5 or 6 lights across the back. Again, I don't particularly like that, because you know, as the flashes are going off like mid-table, they're all flashing at the end, whereas this spills light across the table. I just think it's a better effect personally. Now there's a guy called Randar who that's his tag name. He's got a really awesome virtual pinball setup, and he's got LED, like an LED strip that goes all the way up around the back, and then a whole panel of LEDs at the back, and he's got it worked out so that you know, when you launch a ball, it flies up through with lights all the way up, although that wouldn't have been an effect on the original table, but it looks pretty cool. But I think the key thing, I'm not sure if he's actually done this or not, but given that it's a full strip, ideally you should be able to like light up exactly where the actual you know, the flash unit is on the real table. You'd be able to light up next to it in the right color. But I'm not sure, I don't think, I mean, because it's LED type technology that is used there, I don't think it's as nearly as bright as these Krees. I could be wrong, but these things are really bright and provide just a whole another level of experience, I think. Alright guys, so I'm just going to get a little bit of tape over the side of these, and then we'll slide the glass back up, and then we should be ready to turn it back on. Okay, I've got the classy black tape on here. It's not a great solution. I really need to probably paint them at some point. Just for you guys though, if you are going to create a cabinet, if you're going to do something similar like this, then what I recommend, and something that I would certainly have done if I thought about it, was I would have routed holes into the cab and for the wiring to come up, and actually had, because the Kree lighting is actually really quite flat, we know, without this cover, and you could actually inset it into the wood, and then maybe put a flat piece of perspex just covering it. That would have been really tidy, and you wouldn't see them on the sides at all, and then you'd be able to lift up your screen whenever you want to, because at the moment I have to undo all that whenever I want to get underneath. Okay, alright, let's get the glass in and let's fire it up. Okay guys, to fire it up, we go underneath here and we have the original, well, we have a new button where the original switch would have been for the machine, and also you can see under there's the 2 fans I was talking about earlier, and this one here is just linked straight up to the PC on-off button. Effectively I just rewired it straight to that switch, so that turns on the PC straight into Pinball X, and bang, here we go. So Pinball X is the front end that I am using, and all the tables are on here, accessible by just flicking through. And so you'll find on here there's actually there's both real pinball machines, and there's also machines from Pinball FX. So that's also hooked up through the same front end. And actually here you can get a bit of a view of the, see I was talking about that reflection. So if you're down low like this, that's what you would normally get without that black thing in place. But your normal playing position is here. So you don't see it. So that's why that's there. So really do think about that, guys, because that can actually be pretty distracting if you had that on the screen at all times. Alright guys, so we'll look at the software. What I'll do though is let's just go into a game just so I can show you what these lights look like now that they are all positioned. Okay, let's hop into Scared Stiff, and got a nice little screen here as it loads. Looks like it's the inside of a pinball machine. That's pretty cool. I have seen other people put on the back glass as well, sort of showing around the back as if it was empty. Okay, so now you can see, so we're in Scared Stiff at the moment. There's a lot of red lights on this one, maybe just not a lot of other colours. But even at the start here, you can see how they glow, and they just add that extra bit of something to the table. And you can see they're replicated up the top, as I was saying before. so you get that glow. And I've also got that other little sort of dome thing from eBay, which actually used to have a its own coloured light source under there, and I took all that off and just put the dome on top of the light, and then that actually then put stuff all over the ceiling, which looks pretty cool as things are flashing and going off. Anyway, let's start it up here. You can sort of see how these lights happen, so you can see they all went off there, and I'm not going to be able to play one-handed, but you sort of get the idea in terms of just gives that extra bit of stuff going on, right? Of course, these ones are all red. We'll show another table with some different colours. Okay, some Indiana Jones. You can see like nothing, no lights. Oh, there was one straight off the fire. Some more here. So yeah, this is a different set of colours. What a great table this is too, by the way. Look at that, just lights up. All right, let's start.
I am the king of pain.
This is a classic table.
I'm getting really hot up here.
There we go. Different colours going off. A few reds in this one too, but I think one of those LEDs changes lights. A colour here goes to white, so it has that option too to change colours as well. Wow. Ah! Get the castle. Hey. We've got the rumble pack going. And all the lights, guys. Seriously, it really comes to life. Oh, that was pretty poor. Alright, well you get the idea anyway, in terms of the lighting effects and stuff and the rumble pack. It just really adds to the whole experience. Alright, well let's hop out of here and I'll just show you a few other quick things about the software setup side of things. We're not going to go into it in a lot of detail obviously in terms of time, but at least let me show you sort of some key aspects of the software. Okay, so the first thing to notice with Pinball X as a front end screen is that you can actually get it to fire off some little videos into your DMD. So this one here doesn't do a lot. Some of the ones that don't actually have DMDs, like this pinball game, I've just got the old press start thing there. Yeah, we've got Last Action Hero. So yeah, it does a little animation just as you're flicking through the table, so that's pretty. So other than the launcher being Pinball X, let's hop out of here. Actually, first of all, maybe if I go into a, let's go into one of the Pinball FX games, and I'll just show you how that looks. Okay, let's go into Star Wars Rebels. Okay, and you can see it's kicked straight into the game, so it's basically fired up Steam in the background, and again there's if you go to the Pinball X forums, there's details on how to set all that up so that you can fire up Steam and load the game automatically without having to select anything extra. And of course, how good is this? You know, especially with the 1080 in here, beautiful 3D graphics. So it's pretty cool to be able to play these sort of fantasy tables. And so with the controls, I've got it effectively set up through joy to key, because these inputs for the buttons are going through a controller that's not like an iPad. The controller for these buttons, I think, is going through the plunger, as I was saying earlier, and I think that one basically acts like a joystick. So I had to do a joy to key to map it to the keys that it's expecting in Pinball FX. So I can start it with the launch button and use that to fire.
I need to be ready to take off or none of us stand a chance.
And I do find that Pinball FX has a little bit more lag on the flippers, so you sort of have to compensate for that. Once you've been playing visual pinball, which has slightly less lag, still has some lag, but but these tables are really, really cool for just something different.
Ready to ship for takeoff.
Needs a little something.
And to be honest, I'm actually trying to nudge it. Of course, it doesn't have nudge support either. That's the other thing, which is a little bit unfortunate.
Well, every little bit helps.
But everything else about the game is so cool. How it's just, you know, virtual 3D and things flying around.
I still sense the Jedi and his Padawan within my grasp.
It's cool, eh? It's really cool. Ah,
This whole mission thing is nuts.
damn. Anyway, you get the idea. And if I just exit out of here, just using the same exit key, which is really the escape, then we take straight back to Pinball X. So yeah, really nice way to be able to flick between originals and the Pinball FX ones. Okay, well, let's hop back out to the desktop. And you can configure this so that you can't get out to the desktop, but you can see there joy to key set up. So if I click on there, you'll see that I've got using that to map my joystick buttons, which is the one on the right here is the right slash, one on the left is the shift, the magna save is the right arrow. Magna save on this side, I think it's probably off the screen. Let's get this bigger. So, yep, it's the left magna save is the left arrow, and then we've got the main plunger, which is enter. We've got start, which is up arrow. We've got the extra ball, which is D. And we've got the escape button being B. So just in terms of sites, if you're starting off with Visual Pinball, then the main one to go to is the VP Forums. And under VP Forums, there is a section called Getting Started. And there is actually a whole installation guide here, and the installer and FAQs and stuff, so you can go through that, guys. There's plenty of actual help on there to do that. To get in here in terms of the forums, because the forums have got a stack of information and so many really friendly, nice people in these forums that will assist you if you get stuck. Of other sites and software that you may need to be aware of, there is what's called the DOF config tool. So the DOF is the direct operating framework, and this is what actually drives the lighting around the outside and all the external feedback mechanisms with the gear motors and all the rest of it. So Visual Pinball will supports DOF, the DOF framework, but you have to download the DOF framework separately, or at least the configuration files. And there's like one configuration file for the whole lot. Now I haven't been in here for a while, to be honest, and you need to log in under your own name, and you can download the latest file. Again, guys, we're not going to go into a full setup here because that would take a long time. But if you do follow your way through the instructions and so forth, hopefully some of this will make more sense when you come up to those stages. All right, so without having the DOF, you won't fire off all the feedback stuff. So you definitely need that if you're going to use the feedback. So there you go, guys. That was a pretty quick overview, I know. I mean, there is quite a lot, obviously, to go through with Visual Pinball and all the software setup side of things, but at least I showed you the main site there in the configuration files. You've seen a little bit about the inside and some of the things to think about in terms of you know, planning and building your cab. Anyway, guys, that is it for this video. I also hope you got something out of it too, and for your own little project you might be doing. And until next time, look after yourself and all that good stuff. Make sure you subscribe. Give this a thumbs up if you did like the video, of course. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, ciao for now.